are listening to the Loving Your Own Soul podcast, and I'm your host, Britt. Guided by my own intuition, my intention is to deliver genuine conversations centered around health and wellness, spirituality, self-expression, and culture. In this space, I will provide you with real-life stories, theories, and inspiring perspectives to help you uncover and tap into your own true potential. I'm so grateful you've chosen to tune in with me on this mindful exploration to living a more fluid life through a deeper connection to the soul. Now let's dive into today's journey. All right. So today on the podcast, I get to introduce to you one of my beloved friends who I actually first connected with because she and her partner photographed my wedding. And if you want to learn more about my wedding, you can actually jump back a couple episodes. I cannot remember the exact episode number, but it published the end of December, beginning of January. So it's super fun. My partner Dan and I recorded that. I would highly recommend checking that out. But more importantly, I'm so excited to bring Francess Davis of Mad Fizzy Media onto the show, as she is truly such a special soul and just an incredible artist of many, many talents. Now, while the premise of this episode is not about wedding photography, just to give Francess a little shout out, if you are in need of a wedding photographer or know someone who is, they travel as well. I highly recommend checking out Francess and Greg. I think I'll actually post some of my wedding photos with this episode so you can see what I'm talking about, but they're truly the most unique and incredible photos one could ever have. Among many, many things said about our wedding, to this day, we still have people coming up to us and are like, you have the coolest wedding photos we've ever seen. So shout out to Greg and Francess. But today's topic actually flies on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, as Francess and I talk about psychedelics and the connection to our sense of creativity. Plus, Francess also opens up about her own journey as an entrepreneur and creative and the various ways she had to pivot as a result of 2020. Now, as some of you may know by now, I myself will intentionally experiment with various forms of plant medicine for my own self-growth and personal development with myself as well as my partner. So I totally understand firsthand the potential harm that can come without having a pure intention for certain decisions you elect to make throughout different points of your life. And to that point, using a substance to numb out feelings or emotions that you aren't willing or able to face, using a substance because you don't have resources to help you move through your pain, or, simply struggle due to brain chemical imbalances. Like, there's so much that just can come without good intention. However, this conversation was really just set up to inspire and bring some typically taboo subjects into the light and maybe show a different side or a different standpoint than what we've, traditionally been taught, because there's just so much out there. And I firmly believe that there is no right or wrong. Things are just what they are. Of course, our different viewpoints and perceptions can feel like there is a right or a wrong. However, if we all have different perceptions, how can we actually know what is right or wrong? And now I'm generalizing, of course, but just something to think about. And I really started this podcast for the purpose of being able to have open conversations and talk about a variety of topics. So, in listening to this conversation, I encourage you to come with an open mind and at that same time, really just feel into your thoughts and feelings and emotions surrounding some of these topics. Like, do you agree with these topics? Do you not? What feelings or emotions are being stirred in your body? And as always, if something makes you feel uncomfortable, have enough, respect and love for yourself to also not engage in something either. Like, we don't have to do anything that we don't want to do. So, and I also, just one more thing, I did just want to add a level of sensitivity to this topic too, because I'm all too familiar, firsthand familiarity with addiction and substance abuse. So while we are talking about the intentional uses of plant medicine or particular drugs, I do just want to let anyone know who is listening that this conversation is not meant to sensitize addiction or speak to the many, many mental health struggles that so many deal with and typically turn to substances to try to escape from. My heart just honestly goes out to anyone who has struggled, is struggling, or has been directly affected by addiction, because it is very real and a very traumatizing experience that unfortunately far too many have to incur in their lifetimes. However, when we speak about different forms of drugs or, any substance, it's important to also understand what is addictive or not addictive and what else may be causing or triggering into an addiction, which this is just like such a huge topic. It's really not one that I'm able to completely have, but I did just want to point out at the baseline that this conversation is not intended to make light of any harmful issues or situations by any means. This conversation is really just simply opening the doorway to better understanding psychedelics, what they can do for us, ways they may aid in our mental health or creative channels, and just the differing ways individuals as well as science and medical professionals are electing to experiment or study and research them. There are so many incredible benefits to the various tools that we have available to us. I just find that it's really important to learn and understand the full scope and possibilities of everything that we have available if they speak to us. And if they don't, cool. That simply means that they aren't for us at this point in time or in our lives. And again, all we can do is really make the best decisions for us. And at the same time, this conversation is also not intended to persuade you or encourage you to do anything. It's really just bringing light to the use of psychedelics and the creativity and different kind of openings that can come from them when used intentionally. So Francess is such a wonderful being with the biggest heart. I'm so excited for you guys to get to know her more. And I'm also just so grateful to her for being willing to come on the show and open up about this topic alongside of me. And of course, if you want to see some truly incredible artwork, go check her out on Instagram at Mad Fizzy Media. And to that point, let's go ahead and jump right into today's conversation with Francess Davis. Enjoy, and I will see you on the other side. All right. Well, Francess, welcome to the podcast. In a way, this feels like I want to say it's like a long time coming, but I don't know that that's true. I just love you, love your energy, and I'm so excited to just dive in here deeper into you, your work, your passions, and everything today.
Oh my gosh, Britt, same. Like I feel the same way about you, and I'm really excited we get to do this together and share and get to know each other even better. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who do not know, we were actually connected because you and Greg's your fiance now, right?
Yes,
that's what, yeah. Yeah, your fiance, boyfriend at the time, shot Dan and I's wedding back in November 2019. And everyone asked oh, what was, the best decision about your wedding, blah, blah, blah. And we're always tied between number one, investing in wedding planners was amazing. Shout out to Allison and Cassandra, who, they're phenomenal individuals. And then number two, booking you and Greg as our wedding photographers, because you are just so unique. I mean, I think you've heard me tell this before, but I just instantly, the second both of you showed up, it was just this instant level of comfort where I wasn't really that stressed about the wedding, because we were more just it's an experience. We want to have fun, all the things. But the two of you just truly added into that. And then on top of it, took the sickest wedding photos. I mean, we still get compliments all the time where people are who took those photos? Those are the coolest, the craziest, just the best photos ever. So that's kind of our connection of how we met.
Your wedding was epic. like legendary. People in Rincon are still talking about your wedding.
I love that.
Like
So
100%.
fun.
And we won several awards for photos that we shot during your wedding as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And you don't get those moments with every client. And I feel like you're like being open and kind of like trusting us and feeling connected to us is what sort of like allowed that to happen, you know? So thank you.
Yeah, it was so fun. And then really our just like friendship has kind of continued from there, and it's been so much fun. But I think this week in particular, maybe a couple of days ago, you guys just got back from a backpack river trip that you were telling me about out in true nature. I think you said it took like 3 days to get to the full middle of it, but I would love to just kind of clue in our listeners a little bit about that trip, because we have a lot of nature lovers on here and your trip just sounds so sick.
Yeah, no, it was incredible. We rafted the John Day River, which cuts through Eastern Oregon, and it goes through basalt canyons. Mm-hmm. So we rode it in a raft, and we actually did the trip last year with 4 people. And this year, my partner and I, Greg and I, decided we were going to do it alone, do it as like team building and have kind of a little couples getaway. And it was a little more challenging with just 2 than it was with 4. Like it definitely required a lot more power to like get down the river than we were expecting. So I was glad we added in more days to the trip to allow ourselves to take a day off or have a short day. But we ended up like really needing to like row and use every day of the trip. But yeah, I mean, you're out there, like you are out in the middle of nowhere, like in the desert, which can be kind of an oppressive landscape a little bit. And Greg caught fish, he caught smallmouth bass. I got to go crawdadding for the first time, which was really, really cool. Yeah, and throughout it, like by the end of the trip, Greg and I were like dialed, like really synced up in terms of our rowing. And I love to row anyway. Like I rowed crew when I was in high school and stuff, and being on the water I love. And the trip is typically like, depending on the craft you're in, it's almost more of like a lazy river. There's one large rapid that we did take. We didn't portage the boat, but it wasn't too bad. When we went, the flow level was fairly low too, so there wasn't a lot of water, but that means you're not moving as fast. And like there were some shallow sections as well where we had to get out and walk the boat. We brought our dog. She looked so cute. She had a little life vest on.
So cute.
Yeah, but it was really, really good. It was a great trip and a great way to like just reset.
Yeah.
And unplug for a minute, which I felt like I really needed to do. My partner is more the outdoor guy. I mean, he's an elk hunter, fisher. I mean, he knows how to survive in the wilderness. I'm from New York City, so like camping wasn't a thing. That's like not a thing that you do. I mean, maybe some people's families did that, but we like didn't do that. So I kind of started my outdoor, great outdoors experience after moving to Oregon. So most of this stuff is fairly new to me still. Yeah.
So fun. And you guys are in like the true outdoors. I just feel like the Pacific Northwest, whenever I think of just, visualize the actual term outdoor, the great outdoors, like you immediately think of that side of the country.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we went camping in Puerto Rico together once, and that was my first time camping.
Oh, cool.
And, yeah, we went up to Jayuya by, or it's called Toro Negro is the name of the forest. It's one of the highest points in Puerto Rico. So it's deep mountain jungle, but it's kind of like you're in basically the same kind of landscape that you're in like a couple hours away. Like there's not that diversity, and you don't have necessarily the epic views and like, this like canyon rock side and epic waterfall. Like here, it's like the nature is like visually so incredible to witness. And other places I've lived, it just hasn't been that way. So it wasn't really a calling for it, but I get it now. Like I understand now why people who live here get out, because the nature here is so beautiful and an amazing experience.
So beautiful. Do you find that yourself as an artist, or maybe Greg in particular, that a lot of your or some of your creative passion and kind of fuel comes from natural elements, or even just taking a trip like that? Do you come back so much more revived and ready to go?
Yeah, like like for me, it is therapeutic.
Mm.
Like I almost feel like I need to go to nature and I sort of take it as medicine.
Yep.
And I'm grateful to Greg for like pushing me to do it, because I would just be like Insta, like what do I need to do next? And I'm like business and to-do lists and this and that. And sometimes it's like you need to give yourself some space away from that to get clarity and just like give the mind a break. I don't know necessarily that like being out in nature directly inspires my work,
Mm-hmm.
but it does kind of help me to remain balanced or like return to a more of a place of balance.
Mm-hmm.
Greg, on the other hand, his calling to nature is different than mine. I think he interacts with animals, he hunts, so he has this connection to animals and the terrain where he's constantly looking at animal sign and tracks and trying to engage with the space we're in a much more interactive way than I am. I'm more of an observer than trying to like figure out what do all these things mean. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like it's very symbolic with how we will also just like dance and walk through life in general.
Yeah, for sure.
So cool. I love it. Yeah. Well, obviously we were connected through your wedding photography business, which the two of you, again, are just such incredible photographers. We had connected in 2019, and then 2020, as we're all familiar with what took place in March of 2020, that we're now, still kind of coming out of, where we sit here, summer 2021. But for you, I know your business had to kind of take a different turn. On top of it, you guys were really like, you were winning awards. And just as an entrepreneur, like I so relate to that piece of your journey where it's like you've put in blood, sweat, tears, obviously out of love and passion and everything. And you feel like, okay, like we're doing the thing, like it's all aligning. And then suddenly the pandemic hits and, wedding photographers, I mean, a lot of creatives, like the event space, I mean, so many businesses, it was just like,
yeah, entertainers.
Yes.
It's not like all the people that make life fun.
Yes, I was just about to say that.
It's like everybody who had a job that were the jobs that people, like that's what you work for. Like you work to be able to have these luxuries or to go out and have this good time. I felt like all of the people that make the world like special and exciting and fun got shafted.
Totally. 100%. So sad. I would love to know from you just kind of how that was from you. And then we'll kind of get into like how you pivoted as well. But, especially from someone who does make life fun. Like what was that experience?
Oh, I'm so glad it was how it was for you. Like, yeah, we like moving into the pandemic, we had been like really pushing ourselves and operating on a very kind of like high competitive level within the photography industry. Late nights, submitting to awards, participating in workshops. And we actually had just exited a workshop with Joss and Tree. There are two other photographers who live here in Portland, and I respect them so much, their work and their whole approach to business. And we left that workshop, it was sort of towards the end of February. And I had all these like ideas and I was like, crush, go, like work, to-do lists. And we were implementing all these new tools that we had learned from doing the workshop into our business. And the pandemic hit. And it was like, skirt. Like everything stopped. It was like all these emails, cancellations, like full stop, and it was really heartbreaking to have been finally feeling like we were like really achieving the success we wanted to, and being recognized for it, not only by the clients we were working with, but by our colleagues, our peers in the industry, with, you know, winning awards and that kind of thing. And to kind of have that taken away, like my job, my ability to create the thing that I love to do, that gives my life purpose, that makes me excited to get up in the morning. It was really hard, you know, and I kind of felt like in the beginning, I had a strong moment where I was like, I'm going to do some online workshops, and I'm going to, you know, teach people how to do things while they're stuck at home. And I did one, which was great. I did like a intro to iPhone photography workshop.
Cool.
Yeah, I have a recording of it still, and it was fun. It was actually cool to learn all the different tools. There's so much you can do with a cell phone. Like there really is a lot you can do with a cell phone if you know how to use it. But then after that, I kind of like, I fell into like a little bit of a depression, honestly, for a few months, where I really just didn't know what to do. I felt pretty lost and pretty sad, and kind of like I was like mourning my business being
kind of taken from you. It's like a grief.
It was a grief. It was a grief. And we had just a few years earlier come out of Hurricane Maria, which had also a massive disruption to our business, where we lost a year's worth of bookings. So I kind of almost felt like this is happening again, you know, and I was like, I can't freaking believe it, you know. But anyway, I allowed myself that time and worked through it. And I think eventually like reached sort of this place of acceptance with it. And my roommate at the time, got a job working for a cannabis company, and she's like, hey, you know, I think I might be able to get you like a job, you know, shooting for cannabis. And I was like, okay. And it was like, bam, like it's on. And I'd shoot in the morning and edit in the afternoon. Just working with Greg was growing cannabis in our backyard. So it was great because I had access to actual fresh stuff and flower. And I started building a commercial portfolio. So by the time I had the opportunity to present to this client, I had what I needed to prove that I could actually do the work. Because as a wedding photographer, you do everything. I mean, we're talking portraits, we do details, we shoot rings, in very like high pressure situations too. I mean, wedding day is happening like in a stream. It's a train that you cannot stop.
And you can't miss anything.
You can't miss anything. Yeah. And I think a lot in the commercial world, though, there's a perception of wedding photographers as sort of being lesser than, or wedding photographers, you know, they do weddings because they can't do commercial work. It's certainly not as glamorous. And I think most people have this idea of wedding photography as being like cheesy, or, you know, like, and there's a lot of wedding photography out there that's really cookie cutter. Obviously that's not what we do, but I felt like no one's going to you can't sell yourself as a commercial photographer with a wedding portfolio. So I aggressively started just creating work, like cranking out work to build a new business, which has been amazing. It's Mad Fizzy is the name of the business, the new commercial project.
I love the name, by the way. Is there any story behind the name?
Yeah, I suppose I could give you the like honest story.
Yeah, if you want to share.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Greg and I were because we had been wanting to do commercial work. It's like, well, we should put something together, or something where we can have like a website or something where we can put our work that's not wedding work. Because I have a massive portfolio of like creative portraiture, creative still life that I've been shooting for the past 10 years, but you can't really put that with weddings. It's like, you don't want to show your grandma that, or your mom that. If you're trying to book a wedding photographer, there's like weird stuff on the website too. It's like, you just want to have what you're selling. So we were sitting up one night and we actually did a bunch of nitrous and we're giggling and laughing and coming up with names and finally landed on mad. And, you know, mad means like crazy, sort of out there. And fizzy means like upbeat, effervescent, fun, happy. And that's kind of, I feel like who I am and who Greg is.
I love that.
Too. Yeah.
That's so fun. I think that was one of the things that had drawn us actually to the two of you as our photographers for our wedding was, I think, looking at your, maybe it was like your personal Instagram profiles or somewhere, seeing your other photography that wasn't maybe wedding, that was more like individuals or from, you know, even maybe some burns or different parties and
really?
stuff, that we were like, oh, these people look so rad. Like the photos are cool, but I feel like it was more just like, oh, these people look so rad. Like they're the vibe that we want. And that was kind of the overall decision. And the fact too, that it wasn't, you know, the cookie cutter photography, because that's not us.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting because maybe it could be worth it to sort of maybe include some more of that stuff.
But I will say we're also kind of, at least myself, Dan tells me this all the time. He's like, you tend to like the things that like majority don't like. So
that's good though, because honestly, we don't want to work with the majority of people.
True.
Like you are our ideal client avatar.
Thank
you. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
we want to work with more Britt and Dans.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to work with people that want something that's really like staged or really manufactured. So if maybe showing a little bit of ourselves brings
that person
with like clients that are going to understand us and really like want what we do, it's worth, I think, turning off. Like things that are polarizing can sometimes be really, really powerful. Or for every like, you know, 2 haters you have, you've got 8 lovers, you know,
absolutely.
Kind of like philosophy, I guess.
Totally. Speaking of your work with Mad Fizzy, so number one, everyone should definitely go, whether you're in, you know, working in a corporation or into product or whatever, the photos are just incredible. I think it's been a CBD company that you've been working with, like tinctures and things.
Yeah, Taro. CBD.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I was like, that needs to be in like a Times Square billboard or something. Like just the colors and the depth. It's so cool. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I felt like with that project, I really got to push a lot creatively. And that's something that I really loved about commercial work, period, as opposed to the wedding work. I feel like I can really more directly like pull from some of my like other sources of inspiration and infuse it into the work. There's a lot more freedom there. And definitely Taro CBD they're aligned with kind of like that psychedelic vision and style and plant medicine. So it felt really, really natural. And yeah, I worked on that project like crazy. Like I poured my heart and soul into creating those pictures.
They're beautiful. I mean, truly works of art. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah. I got to work a lot. I did a lot of work with prisms. And I actually, because I was thinking about do I have any bottles here? I was thinking about the bottle. And it's, you know, there's certain ways you can shoot it, and you can shoot it as a tincture, you can shoot it as CBD, as healing. And I'm like, how can I think about this in a different way? Like, how can I represent this as something that's like not just CBD, but kind of like get it something else to kind of like bring in like a different inspirational thinking into it? And I thought of it as like an LSD dropper.
Yes.
I was like, what if this, you know, like what if I shoot it as if it was like an LSD vial instead of like thinking of it as this like medication.
Yeah.
like, and, CBD obviously is very healing and it's important in that space, but there's other things that you get out of it too. And I think with like the branding that she was trying to do and the kind of audience she was trying to reach, it needed to be a little bit less medical, medicinal, like clinical is the word I'm actually looking for, and more like fun lifestyle kind of like plant medicine users who also, I think, like some of the psychedelic thinking resonates with those people. So that's kind of how I tried to reimagine it in my mind.
100%.
Yeah.
I see that so much. It's kind of like otherworldly or like those other realms, and just tapping into the different colors, the different lines, just that whole different depth perception and just perception that comes with the use of psychedelics in general. It makes CBD feel a little more playful and fun compared to I don't know what the right word is, like clinic, like make it clinical medicine.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, it should be, it's something that you can like integrate into your life. She has in her line, she has a whole bunch of different kinds. And one of them is, it's Pleasure is the name of it. And it has Damiana in it and CBD in it and lemon. And it's, something that you take, and Greg and I have actually like incorporated it into our kind of like intimate routine, where we both take a little bit of the CBD before we like, massage or, try and move into like a more of like a sexual space.
Yeah.
And I hadn't ever experimented with CBD before until CBD tinctures, until I started working on Kate's brand. And now I'm like, oh yeah, this is awesome. Like this works. Like this is really, really cool. And so something that I didn't know about. And I think that story is really important to tell about these products, that they are accessible to people who want them to like enhance their lives, as opposed to like solving a like a medical problem or like, dealing with pain or something like that. CBD can be used just for pleasure, to make things feel better. So I feel like that was something that I kind of wanted to like communicate through those photos.
I love that so much, especially using it, intentionally and as an enhancement to your life. So on the same side of that, as it pertains to psychedelics and, different uses of plant medicine and things like that, I find like using them as an enhancement to your life is such a beautiful way of putting it, because that is truly their gift and just the sacredness of plants and the medicines and, everything that we're able to work with, whether we're enhancing our life as a couple, as a partner, through realms of pleasure, as an individual, there's so much. And then also as an artist as well, and an individual, and just even trying to open up different parts of the mind that maybe we need that enhancement to get to that space. So I would love to know just from you as an artist, like in what ways do you use psychedelics and different forms of plant medicines to kind of help open up some of those creative channels for yourself?
Such a big question.
It is.
And it's a great question. I feel like I have so many different ways I can answer it too. I've been more like in my life or my experiences, more of a deep diver with psychedelics, where I'll do like a higher dose and then come back and create from that space. I've been experimenting more with microdosing or mini dosing, primarily with LSD. I haven't experimented too much with mini dosing, mini or microdosing psilocybin, but it's something I'm definitely interested in exploring more. And yeah, the abstract thinking that you get when you're using those types of things it does shift you. And I think in a way it gives you permission to access different parts of your brain and your emotional space. So I feel like as a creator and as an artist, I need to be drawing from something within myself. I need to be allowing myself to become emotionally connected to the work that I'm creating. The work as well as the client and the subject matter, I have to feel something. I have to let myself feel something, whether it's a twinge of sadness, depression, whether it's excitement. That I feel like that space is where my best work comes from, when I'm creating from that place as opposed to like a more cerebral space. So I typically sketch a lot now doing the still life work because it does require more setup and design and planning and props, photo styling, that type of thing. So I get into a creative space through the use of plant medicines and different substances. And that's when I allow it to come out. And it comes out typically on paper. I'll also take notes, just write words down, and that type of thing. And then I tend to execute from a sober space. Like when I'm working, I'm not under the influence of substances typically. Mm-hmm. Occasionally, yes, I do like get down and kind of almost like party and shoot and play in my space. And that's really fun too, especially if I'm just doing something for myself, something personal. But I'll also do it with client work. And I feel like if I have a twinge of inspiration when I'm under the influence of something and I'm working on a client project, follow it. Mm-hmm. Just because you're a little bit messed up, or whatever, doesn't mean that you can't do professional work as a creative professional. It's like, if this is what's happening, if this something's coming up right now, it's almost a disservice to your client to stop yourself from pursuing those ideas. Mm-hmm.
And they're still your ideas. It's kind of like dropping into that subconscious realm, that realm of true creativity, such as like even with meditation, the way that we can really drop in and you can get a lot of visuals and things like that. And it's kind of like trusting that like what is for you is for you. And I feel like it's just the intentionality behind it. And it's like, you wouldn't be getting those ideas through that medicine if you weren't meant to work with them or you weren't meant to do something with them.
Definitely. That's a really interesting way of thinking about it, actually. Yeah. I hadn't thought about it that way before. As it kind of being like a fated kind of thing, or this is, this is something that's supposed to be happening.
Yes.
There's so much, I feel like there's so much self-judgment that can occur, like with use of substances, like, am I supposed to do that? Is it right? Or blah, blah. And kind of like giving yourself permission is something that I still kind of struggle with a little bit, in terms of like giving myself permission to take the time to have an LSD trip or a mushroom trip or micro or mini dose, and knowing that it's okay to do that.
Yes.
People have martinis at lunch before they go into a big meeting to loosen up, and nobody questions that. That's not something that in our culture we look down upon. But I think with psychedelics, there's still this stigma associated with it that I struggle with, in terms of saying I have to be on point, and I have to be professional, and this and that. And it's like, no. This is a tool. This is something that's helping you to create, the same way someone having a martini at lunch before the meeting is going to put them in whatever loose space they need to be in to do a client presentation or whatever they have to do. So I'm trying to kind of I'm working through that personally, in terms of like trying not to judge myself for when I choose to use and when I choose not to use and stuff like that.
Totally. And judging yourself just per the conditioning that we've been taught. We've been taught all, quote unquote, I'll use drugs as the umbrella term, even though I don't like that term because to me there's different faces of drugs, but like, oh, everything is bad, like don't do everything. But you can drink alcohol and like you can whatever watch, Mad Men or people from the 50s and 60s and even today, having drinks at lunch and you see the like boardroom of the guy, oh, you want a scotch or whatever, and it's like that's acceptable. But yet these other tools have just been taught that they're not acceptable, which to me also comes from a very egoic place and not understanding, or I mean, we could probably go down a rabbit hole with this, or that people did understand the true power of what is possible with them. And that's why, we were taught differently about them. But I love that you mentioned it as a tool, because I just think that explains it so well. And then also, you mentioned you and Greg just with CBD of using that as like a pleasure tool, a pleasure enhancer. And same with like couples, like we will practice, working with different plant medicines just to become closer as a couple, or to even help unblock maybe some like emotional blockages that we're dealing with, that we just need to drop into that space to connect back together. And you mentioned, your backpack trip was very therapeutic, being in nature. And for me, like being in nature and just communing with the trees and the flowers or water or the sky, or just even animals, like the way animals can feel your shift in energy. It's so beautiful. And it's like the true essence of life, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And I feel like psychedelics really connect you to nature.
Yes.
They give you that like connect, you realize you're one with the universe and you realize you're a part of things and like an integral part of the world. I mean, like, holy crap. Like that's what you realize when you're on psychedelics. You're like, I am one with the, like,
yes.
What?
Yes.
I mean, that's such a massive breakthrough kind of thing to understand, especially because we feel so separated most of the time from nature and separated from the trees and separated from the natural cycles in our modern life. Incredibly like powerful thing. And yeah, Greg and I did used to use MDMA like in the beginning of our relationship to connect with one another more. I no longer use MDMA. I'm open to perhaps sometime later on doing it again. I do feel like I got what I needed from that experience. I love hanging out with people who are rolling because I feel like I can immediately drop into that space. I remember that level of empathy, which I think is a really one of the cool kind of things about MDMA is that you can have full recall of the experience. You remember the things that you learned from it, and you remember those like reframing of thoughts and that like feeling of love and attachment and understanding to another person. And it's easy. For me anyway, it was very easy to like reintegrate that into my life. Like MDMA, I feel like the integration process with MDMA felt really easy for me. With, I would say, some of the more cerebral type psychedelics like LSD or psilocybin, some of like the mental things that happen with that can be a little more complex to reintegrate. For me, I feel like it's coming from a space that's more here as opposed to like a heart-based space, which MDMA just feels like heart space.
Heart space all the way.
You know,
I would agree with that. Yeah. I mean, MDMA, you can just, even talking about it, you can start, just getting remembrances and dropping into that space entirely. Yeah. They're so cool.
Absolutely. I just can't deal with the come down anymore.
Same.
I just can't hang. I'm like, oh my God. Like, if I was to roll on Saturday night, it's like Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm like, I have shit to do. Like, I can't like be depressed.
I am so sensitive. I am beyond sensitive. Yeah.
Me too. Like, I'm open to at some point like doing it again when I have like time, like when I have a whole week to kind of process and recover from it and stuff. But it's too much of a dice roll. I pass on it now.
I feel that. I think for myself, and I think, it's also safely utilizing these enhancements as well. But like I've tried to then throw myself back into life come Monday and force myself. And mentally, I just think that I really rattled myself and some things that I'm still just, working from. And it comes to me just back to the intentionality and like the sacredness of it and understanding, okay, it's okay if it takes like a week, but you need to give yourself that integration time, which for me is also a lot of, work with spirituality and different tools and all these different tools and things. But it's when you then try to like flip the switch back that it can rock you, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting. The word sacred, I feel like absolutely applies to these substances that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, like for me, sometimes the word sacred or like even the word medicine, it could kind of like, I feel like it can kind of like generate this like judgmental space of different substances, where I don't know, like you can use all of these things in a sacred way at a rave, and feel like the energy of the group and the pumping and this and connection and all that stuff. But when you think of a rave, you don't necessarily consider that to be like a sacred space.
Yes.
I think it can be. And I feel like that's what the intention is about, like kind of the game you bring whenever you're going to go into an experience like that. Sometimes I feel like within the community, there can be some like, especially as psychedelics are now moving into like a place of more acceptance, we cannot forget the party scene.
Yes.
And how, and the pioneering of these things and people using it in sort of like almost like a pseudo-religious way, like house music is my church or whatever.
Yes. And the way music moves through you. And I think to that point, the difference, and this kind of goes back to the art, but like with music, for me, I love music. However, there are certain types of music that my brain is like, nope, nope, nope. And I have to like literally pull myself from those situations. So back to that like intention out. And again, like, the house music is my church and things like that. I think that's interesting too, in that like, for me, because I am so just aware, when in certain instances too, it can also be where I'm like, I got to get myself out of here. Like, this is not a reflection of my inner vibe. But then there's some people that would come into quote unquote, my comfortable space and would be like, ugh, like get me out of here. Yes. And it's just kind of like the human experience that I think is really interesting.
And I feel like there needs to be acceptance of both of those different ways of engaging with these things.
Yes.
Like it's okay to want to, create a space at home and set up pillows and like have like an MDMA or a mushroom trip and like set up a conversation with your partner and do it in that like healing kind of like very intentional, like more so almost traditionally therapeutic way. But it's also okay to go out and take them with your friends and party responsibly and have that kind of a connection, that kind of an experience. And it can also be, which I think people view more as like recreation. But recreation is incredibly therapeutic. Technically, it was a recreational activity, but for me, it felt like therapy. So there's that crossover that happens that I would like there to be more kind of like conversation and acceptance around people using in ways that work for them, and education about how to like assess how you're feeling. You know, like what is this doing for you? How do you feel after this experience? That kind of like that type of thing. You know, I mean, I definitely view all of these things as being incredibly sacred and incredibly special and definitely like divine. You know? But I don't feel that to connect with God, you need to be in a church.
Yes.
So like sort of on that same note, I don't feel like there needs to be a one size fits all way for people to use psychedelics to connect with like the divine within themselves, and wherever it comes to you, it comes to you.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting that I would always wonder, you know, in like the journey, whether it's my personal journey, it's like, I feel like for me, it's like the recreation and the party had to come first to then journey into like this next phase as well, which also kind of reminds me of exercise in a way of like, even if I'm dealing with maybe some like low moments of my life, there will be times where like yoga and a bath is all I need. And then there's other times where I'm like, nope, I need the like kickboxing class, the HIIT workout where I just need to like rage, quote unquote. And to me, it's kind of, you know, in that of like, if the slowness and the sensuality is what's calling you at that point in your journey, follow it. But then there's nothing wrong with running around and dancing and getting lost in music and everything like that.
Totally. Oh, that's so great. That's such a good way of framing it. And it kind of like, it makes me think, you know, like about like the creativity process and making art too, where it's like, you don't always have to like follow the same creative process every single time. You know, like at certain moments, these types of things will be inspiring you and propelling you to create. And then other times you need something else. You need something different.
I love that.
Yeah. You know, it's like, okay, I'm feeling this way. I need a bath. Feeling this way. I need to like go pump up, work out. With the creative process, it could be someday like you're feeling like a little like LSD, like mini dose would like put me there. Or I feel like a glass of wine would do it for me. And like looking at it as not something that has to be like a uniform usage, you know, especially for creativity. It's such a like a fluid kind of act. It's a fluid thing that you cannot expect the same results every single time from it, you know?
Yes, absolutely. I love to refer to life as a fluid exploration. And I feel like you just nailed it. Yeah.
Oh,
right there. Entirely. Oh, so fun. So you are also, I believe, doing some educational work through the nonprofit space, specifically about psychedelics and intentional uses. What are you doing specifically with that? How did you get involved with all that?
It's really like kind of an interesting path. The Portland Psychedelic Society put out a call to artists who wanted to present and speak about how psychedelics have influenced their artwork. And I was like, I'll do it, you know, raise my hand. And I gave a presentation. I gave a presentation with some really badass people that I was almost a little starstruck to be on with, who are like heading up Decriminalized Nature, have written books. I'm getting ready to do an art integration therapy class, which will be kind of like used for psilocybin therapy, how you can use the camera to explore yourself and sort through emotions. But yeah, at this point, I'm interviewing different artists about how they use psychedelics to inform their creativity and their process. And it's been a range. I feel like I've learned so much about how differently everyone approaches it. You know, I think that's what's given me that kind of like sense of acceptance with like, it's okay for one person to do it this way and another person to do it this way, as long as it's working for you. Great.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's what I'm doing right now, and exploring that. It's like personal curiosity, honestly. How do you work this out? I mean, there's a lot of research being done in terms of like, how can MDMA, for PTSD with MAPS, and Johns Hopkins University has done tons of research on psilocybin from like a therapeutic, psychology space, where they're working with people who have been resistant to like normal forms of treatment. So you're trying to fix a problem, but I'm more curious about the enhancement. How can we use these tools to like enhance our lives? So that's what I'm doing right now, and it's been a really cool kind of journey, I guess you could say. With meeting different people and trying to kind of find my own voice and perspective within it, while also respecting the different kinds of perspectives that some of the people I'm interviewing have as well, because some people have sort of like differing viewpoints from me. So it's been interesting. Yeah.
Very cool.
I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. Yes, okay. Absolutely. And we don't have to name names or anything like that, but would you be able to give any examples of maybe just kind of comparison of some of the, whether different perspectives or even just different uses that you've learned about?
Sure. Kind of like what we were talking about before, into like recreation versus like sacred ceremony.
Yep.
Some of the people I've talked to have like very strong beliefs that these substances should only be used in ceremonial settings, and that to do so otherwise is sort of disrespectful of the plant. And I feel that their perspective on what ceremony is very narrow.
That's what I was thinking.
I feel that you can have sacred ceremony and sacred connection on the dance floor, and like having full release and dance and just connecting with all the people around you and sweating and not caring about what you look like or whatever, and that's sacred to me. Like, I don't feel the need to be sitting in a circle with a drum beating for it to be valid.
Yes.
So that's been something that I've kind of been trying to figure out as well. I also hold kind of the belief that all drugs are okay. It's how we use them, how we choose to use them as tools that makes the difference. And there's so much judgment of what is healthy and a medicine and what's a drug. And they're all drugs. Right. If you ask me, they're all drugs. And the classification system that was put in place to inhibit people from being able to use, a few years ago, marijuana had no medical benefit.
Yeah.
So I honestly, I feel like by saying now that, well, marijuana's okay, psilocybin's okay, these things are okay, but heaven forbid you do like a little bit of ketamine or a little bit of cocaine, that's bad. You're following the same line of thinking that was suppressing these substances, which are now considered healing. I'm kind of open to anyone coming to me and sharing with me experiences they have with all different kinds of drugs. I think that's something that would be really healthy for us as a society, to not shame people for experimenting and trying different things. So I feel like by putting certain things on a pedestal and saying, this is good and this is okay, and you can use this and it'll make you a better person, but these things, that's bad. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. That's going to make you a drug addict. Like, well, people used to think that marijuana smokers or cannabis users were drug addicts as well. Right. So it's like, I kind of I'm not discounting the fact that more addictive substances are incredibly dangerous and do impact people's lives in a completely different way. But let's talk about it, and let's not shut people down for expressing that they use them, and I think have positive experiences from them.
Totally. And I think too, helping the individuals, and I think a lot of it, comes from the dialogue around it and society of like, oh, you're going to get addicted to this and this and that. And then also like, we've never been taught how to deal with our traumas, our brain chemical imbalances. Like there's so much that happens to the individual that then unfortunately, certain substances, when not used properly, when not, understanding your past and the darkness that comes up, and just, the power of the brain and what, the struggles that exist today are such real things. I feel like it's just our society, we've just really, I don't want to say made mistakes, but like kind of like we haven't handled this properly. And like, I just give so much space to anyone who has lost anyone to addiction, physically or energetically, mentally, everything like that. But also like for society to really take a look at what we're not being taught, and the way it's like, oh, just sweep that under the rug. And, we're seeing things are going to shift. It's going to take time, but understanding like our feelings are valid and what we deal with mentally and our experiences, and the way different experiences can rock someone's world. And if not dealt with, certain things, we're all trying to find a way to deal. And I think that's what it comes down to.
Definitely. Yeah. And you mentioned sort of like what's being taught. And I think that the lack of education and the lack of dialogue around these things is what leads to problems, like not having that understanding of, because with MDMA, which is now like in a position to become considered a therapeutic, like a true medicine. I can't remember. I think they got official FDA. It should be able to.
I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah. MAPS. Oh my gosh, these guys are kicking ass. They're expecting that it will be available for prescription use by therapists like within the next few years.
Such a cool time to be alive.
It is. It really, really is.
So much crazy shit, but like so much cool shit going on too.
But with MDMA, you need to be, if you're going to take that, you need to be aware of the fact that when you come down from that substance, you're going to experience psychological lows, like depending on the amount that you take. It's like, the serotonin in your brain, like that's part of the experience of doing that. And that's part of the experience of doing a lot of other drugs as well. I believe like, cocaine has a similar thing, or, it's like, there are negative effects that happen. There are side effects of all of these types of things, and nothing is a cure-all,
Yes.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, we need to kind of like give people like a full picture of, if you choose to indulge in these things, this is what you need to know is going to happen to you. So you go into it with that, are you going to deal with cravings for it later? How do you manage that? Like not doubling up and doing MDMA several times within a month, or back-to-back weekends is not going to be healthy for you.
Yeah.
It's just, it's just not. It's like, taking mushrooms every day,
not healthy.
Might not be the best idea for you, depending on the dosage. So like all these things need to be discussed. And we somewhat have that with alcohol, but not nearly as much as I think we could too. I think there's a lot of like, people who like drink every single night of the week and this and that, and don't think twice about it. And that's not a dialogue that we have either.
Right.
So kind of just getting more honest about.
Yeah. Anything in excess is not good for you. I mean, even if you eat an excessive amount of fruit, like, whatever it is, like, it's not good for you. And especially these different substances and things like that. And, it's communication, it's honesty. It's kind of like communication 101. And when the communication isn't there, you're left to try to figure it out, make it up in your,
figuring out on your own or going on Arrowhead. And like read through trip reports. That's what I did. Like as like
you Google it. Like
you Google it, or you're like reading Reddit posts about what people like say and trying to figure out, is this going to work for me? And that's part of actually with Art Under the Influence, with the project I'm working on, is I would like to create kind of a not exactly a toolbox or a roadmap, but just allow there to be a collection of different perspectives and experiences where people can listen to someone else talk about, this is how I use this and it works for me in these contexts, and like, okay, maybe that could work for me too. Cool. And kind of, create something that can be of value to people that are in that exploration process and still trying to figure out what works best for them.
Yeah.
As opposed to just like rolling the dice and kind of experimenting every single time.
Totally. Yeah. And also, not understanding that, I feel low, or like I deal with depression, but I'm not able to speak to anyone about it. So instead, kids on the block, we come across certain things, or we find someone's prescription pain meds that we start taking, and we find these things that suddenly make us feel better than our current state. And then we go down this slippery slope because there's no education and communication about it.
Absolutely. That's what we need. We need more. We need drug education in schools. That's not fear mongering.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, and it kind of like creates this distrust as well, where like I remember people saying, if you smoke weed, you're gonna become a degenerate, or it's gonna do all these things to you. And I remember the first time I smoked, I was like, everything's fine.
Yeah,
this is great. Like I had a great time, like, and then it sort of, you're like, well, everything else you just told me was probably a lie, essentially, was a mistruth. So there's really not like a lot of drug education or like trust in the system of people who are like in authority. Yeah. Well, most of them don't know.
Right.
Thankfully, like here in Oregon, I feel so grateful to be living, here in the state of Oregon, here in Portland, where there is a very progressive attitude towards, definitely towards psychedelics, but also towards, drug use in general, and not looking at it as a criminal activity, but as something that people do. And it's not something that people need to be imprisoned for. Exploring your own mind and putting something into your own body shouldn't be illegal. If you do something illegal under the influence of it and you're being irresponsible, we need to deal with that, but we don't need to.
No, I feel that. I mean, alcohol is something that I could go on like a riff about, because I do not agree with the number one, the overuse. I mean, we kind of talked about it earlier, but then, there's a lot of people who consume most likely too much alcohol than is good for them on a weekly basis. And it's just like, oh, but it's fine. It's legal. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I took actually 2 years ago, I just decided I took 8 months off. I didn't drink for 8 months. And it was such an awesome experience to kind of you cut something out of your life and you create space for other things. And
I did something so similar, and it was amazing. And I feel like now I can truly appreciate a beverage when I have it, of like I don't know, I just appreciate it differently, and only, having one, and just like, I guess it's more like, the craft of it, but removing it from my life entirely was beautiful. And I don't see it ever coming back into my life the way it was. Like I never had a problem or anything, but there was definitely times where I was like, I feel like I'm drinking a lot and like, this just doesn't feel aligned. Like it's not who I am.
Totally. Yeah, no, that was a very, almost the same experience that I had. I mean, living in Rincon, everyone's drinking beers in the afternoon.
Yes.
Alcohol is much more a part of the culture down there. Not that it's not a part of the culture in the United States as well, but it's very socially acceptable to have beers in the afternoon or at lunch, and it's just kind of a thing. And
it's like beer all the time.
Basically, you're like cracking your tires, like driving down the road. It's like whatever.
Totally. Yeah.
But I moved out here to Portland, and I was like, I feel like I want to give myself some space from that and kind of like reevaluate my relationship with it. And yeah, it was amazing. Like it gets a little scary too when you decide to do something like that after you've kind of been, using it daily or like drinking wine every day or whatever, to decide I'm not going to do this anymore. You kind of leave this gaping hole. But yeah, like always good, I think, for all substances to kind of constantly be saying, why am I doing this? Which isn't the intentionality. And how is it affecting me? Is it doing for me what I actually want it to do? Is this just a habitual kind of thing that's happening?
Is it a crutch?
Is it a crutch? And sometimes a crutch is useful, but you got to learn to walk eventually. You got to kind of like move through that eventually.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely with like art creation and like trying to make things. Like I can see, like I have had experiences where like substances that I've used, I have felt have been like fueling my creativity and fueling all this like productivity and inspiration for a while. And then something shifts. And I feel like when that shift happens and when the plant has given you everything that you're like receptive to or like able to take in, if you don't stop or taper your usage of it, that's when you start running into problems. If you're not really like listening to yourself and paying attention to, is this enhancement or is this starting to become something that's just habitual, like I said before, I suppose.
Great wrap up. Where do you see like the future of, from your personal opinion, the future of psychedelics and drugs going? Or where would you like to see it going maybe?
I would like to see it enter a space where there can be more education, more acceptance, more compassion, and less shaming and judgment.
We kind of mentioned it a little bit at the beginning, but where can people find you to connect further and kind of follow along with your work and who you are?
Well, Instagram, it's at Mad Fizzy Media. My website is madfizzy.com. That's for the commercial work. And then Haston Davis Studios is our wedding brand, my partner and I's wedding brand.
Cool. Highly recommend for everyone, even to like binge your photos. They're so good.
Thank you.
First of all, this has been such an enjoyable conversation. I love your openness and just ability to really talk about these, sadly taboo subjects is really what they are. But to end all my episodes, I close out with some loving your own soul questions, as I call them, which are just some intuitive on the spot questions so everyone can get to know you a little further. Okay. However, for these, Dan requested that he pick out the questions. Ooh. So these are Dan's questions for you, which I think you are going to love.
Okay, awesome. Cool.
So his first question, such a guy question, what is your favorite snack?
My favorite snack?
Yeah.
Probably like hummus and carrots.
I feel that. So good.
Love hummus.
Next question, and I think I actually know this story, but how did you and Greg meet?
Ooh, okay. So, well, Greg and I met for the first time at a Friendsgiving, like a Thanksgiving thing with friends. And he asked me to come over to his place to shoot reference photos. He was working for a beer company, for a Rincon beer company, and also doing photorealism oil paintings. And he wanted some reference photos done of beer. And so he invited me over to his place, and I set up all my lights, and we shot all day. I mean, we shot for like hours and hours and hours and hours and had so much fun. I still have some of those photos.
Cool.
So that's how we met, and we immediately had a creative dynamic together. I was like, this is someone I can work with. This is someone I can like make things with and be creative with. Yeah, so that was our meeting. Our first meeting was having a photo shoot and playing and being creative together.
Aw, I love that. So symbolic. That's beautiful. Do you have a favorite restaurant in Rincon?
Good question. I really like, there's so many.
So many. Or maybe where's like the first place you go when you arrive back there?
Well, the first place I go when I arrive back there, if I can, is Villa Cofresi for the coconut drinks.
Cool. Yes.
I feel like that's like you get to look at the ocean, have a coconut drink, and you've arrived. But in terms of like, they have great food too. They have wonderful food as well. La Copayena, Ella is a fantastic restaurant. Also, and Manjami. I hope they're still open.
Have I been to Manjami?
They're it's an Italian restaurant.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I've never been there though.
Oh, it's so good. And you don't go to Puerto Rico to have Italian food, but oh my gosh, these women run a banging Italian food business. It's so great. I get the mushroom pappardelle, and it's great. They also have I think they have one of the best wine lists in Rincon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why, probably would be my spots. And then, of course, I think they moved. It used to be Pool Bar Sushi, but I think they transitioned into a new, I'm not totally sure. I think it's Sirenas is a new spot that they're working on. Also, Roots. I love Roots. It's right in the plaza.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So good. They have fresh juices, always fresh catch of the day. Honestly, the steak there is great too. If you're a meat eater, the steak is fantastic. Yeah, I would highly recommend Roots for sure.
Good. There's such good food in Rincon. It's so good.
I know, it's fabulous.
All right, next question. What has been the craziest thing you've seen at a wedding or on a photo shoot?
Oh my gosh. That's another one I have to like choose.
You're right.
I'm going to say you all had some top crazy moments at your wedding.
True.
Like,
I did.
Yeah, like I mean, I'm pretty sure it was it your dad?
Dan's dad.
Dan's dad like jumped off the roof into the pool.
Yep, off the pergola.
Yeah. That was pretty epic. And then blowing fireballs.
Yeah, the fire breathing.
That doesn't usually happen at weddings, especially it's not like, the father of the groom like, yeah. And it's like this massive fireball exploding. It's like, whoa, I was so nervous. I was like, oh my God. Because we're there shooting and I'm like, I don't want to be the photographer encouraging someone to do something dangerous where you like burn your lips or something like that. I'm like, oh, please, but he knew what he was doing and it was super, super rad. We shot a wedding in St. Bart, which is a French Caribbean island. And that was a whole other incredible level of party that I hadn't quite experienced. I mean, we got sprayed with so much champagne. People were dancing on tables. People were taking their clothes off. Yeah, it's super, super fun. I love those kinds of receptions. I mean, you guys had like a whole, like Dan had like a whole, like almost stripper moment happening.
He did, yes.
Yeah, like the cute, swim trunks.
Speedo, yeah,
it's so cool.
Yes. You know what I think is so funny to that point is with, we were talking about earlier, like the difference of like a ceremony versus a rave, but it doesn't matter. It's whatever works for you. Some people we describe our wedding to, and you can just see their face, like they're almost horrified. And then you can feel like they're trying not to judge, but they're kind of judging because they're just like, but what type of wedding did you like? It's just so funny. It's so interesting. Just how we're all so different, and you can just see their face and we're like, oh, it's not making sense. It's like, and we're like, you had to be there. Like, we're just going to stop.
Funny though, because you've showed your collection to like prospective clients, and they get inspired.
Oh, I love that.
They're inspired by your wedding. They're like, I didn't realize like a wedding could be that.
You can do that.
Like, we want that. Like, we want to do that.
So fun.
And more people wanting to get out and go surf in the morning and have that captured, and then like jumping in the pool and stuff like that is something that people don't realize you can do until they see it.
I love that.
Your wedding photos have inspired like other celebrations for sure.
Oh, that is so fun. That warms my heart, especially because everything just so naturally happened. Like there was some intention, like, oh, we want to spend the morning together, like go surf together. But like everyone jumping in the pool, you can't plan that. That's just the vibe.
Glad that like your wedding, getting out in the morning to go surf and then doing the yoga session with Caitlin sets such a beautiful tone for the day. Like creates this like energy of calm and peace and togetherness, and morning yoga sesh before wedding with your friends. That's so awesome. Like, what a gift. Like, what a wonderful, like, emotional gift to give to your group.
Yes.
I love that. And I loved getting to capture that because I love yoga, and I understand that like place that it puts you in after you get out of class and you feel like centered and you feel like yourself and you feel like you've gotten to like reconnect with that inner part of yourself. And I feel like on wedding day, so many couples end up distracted and out of the moment because they're concerned about so many other things going on. So just creating that place for not only for yourself, but for everybody else to have a moment to just sit with themselves and meditate it was really, really cool. And I love Caitlin too. She's
so
my
sweet.
Instructor for forever. She actually has been doing remote sessions with me from Puerto Rico.
Cool.
And I'm so grateful because like I miss her so much. You have an instructor that you feel like you really connect with, that really understands you. And leaving Rincon, one of the things that I was most sad about was leaving La Paz. I was like losing my studio. Like I've been going to the same studio with the same instructors for 5 years. It's a special relationship. So I'm glad we've been able to kind of like keep that up remotely. And, she does private lessons and stuff online, and
she's the best. It's like best. Family.
I know she's amazing. And her I love all the things she has to say during class. They usually really resonate with me. And so you having that on your wedding day for me felt personal because I love her so much too. It was really, really cool.
I love that. It's so interesting how things play out. And like, for me, it was like, again, just intuitively, just kind of creating what I felt I wanted to give for myself, but then also give to those who were being part of the wedding in our group and everything, like the yoga class. But I actually needed that yoga class a lot because I have divorced parents, number one, and I didn't realize until the morning of when it was like, okay, Dan, like, see you later. And even a little bit that morning, I was like, it was suddenly like everything hit me. And I was like, all eyes are on me. And then I was like, and who is like my person, my stabilizer, I'm not going to see you until suddenly I'm walking down the aisle. And I was like, ah. So it was interesting. But then that yoga class just like completely brought me back to center. And I was like, oh no, I've got this. Like, this is going to be such a fun day. Like, we're good.
Oh,
So
I'm so glad to hear that.
yeah, I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah, definitely.
Again, this is the last question from Dan. He would like to know what you like to do for fun when you're not taking photos.
I make glasses. I make party glasses.
Cool. Oh my gosh, so fun.
Yeah, I craft and I do collage. A lot of like visual art stuff, yoga. I love to listen to music. But to be honest with you, I take pictures for fun. Like my work and my fun is very like interconnected and blurred together. I don't see sometimes a whole lot of separation between what I do professionally and what I do for fun. Like I have my friends that I go and shoot with, and we'll do like little portrait sessions and stuff. So I don't know. I feel like it's important to play with your craft too, So I don't know. I kind of shoot a lot. I'm kind of just like, I take pictures like pretty much constantly. But yeah, if I'm not shooting, if I don't have a camera in my hand, I'm typically like crafting, or I cook a lot. Both Greg and I cook quite a bit. So that's something I enjoy doing. I love rolling sushi, making dumplings, that type of thing. Can be kind of meditative and relaxing as well.
Very meditative.
And I love to spend time with my friends. Like when I have time to do it, I really like connecting with the other people in my life. And it doesn't even have to be anything big, but just going and hanging out at their house and drinking coffee and eating cookies, and stuff. Is something I really like, I really like to do. And I love looking at art. I love going to museums. It's one of my favorite things. I love looking at other artists' work. And I watch quite a few documentaries, movies, those types of things. So that's what I do. That's what I do for fun. And I go to parties and stuff as well.
Yeah, I love that. All right. So final question that I ask all of my guests to close out. When did your exploration to diving deeper into your own soul first begin? And how has it evolved since then?
When did I first start diving deeper into my own soul? And how has it evolved since then? I feel like I started understanding my soul and my spirituality when I was really young. But and I think there have been different like moments throughout my life where I've deepened that discovery. Mm-hmm. I think when my grandmother passed, I was in the 4th grade. And I felt like a really deep connection to her that I still feel. Mm-hmm. This is just the first thing that came to mind, so I'm just going to share it.
Yeah.
But I felt after she passed, I felt like she was still with me so much. Mm-hmm. Like as a little kid, like I'm laying in bed, some nights I'd feel like I could feel her around me. And I kind of understood that like life, doesn't end just when our bodies end. Because I could still feel her with me. I guess I was sort of discovering that I had a soul, or that people do have souls or spirits,
That's so special.
Yeah, she's an interesting woman. And I wish I'd had more time with her. But I still have time, and I will have more time with her eventually.
Yeah.
But beyond that, the second like significant soul experience I had, maybe not second, was in Puerto Rico. I did like a very, very high dose of ketamine with a friend of mine. Really, really someone I love deeply, close friend. We did a very, very high dose up in the mountains in Guabate, Puerto Rico, and we did it in separate rooms. It was definitely a ceremonial, more like that kind of sacred, very, very intentional way of doing it. It wasn't an us thing; it was a personal thing. And under the influence of that, I realized, because when you're under the influence of a large dose of ketamine, you lose all of your sensory input, like hearing, sound, sight. You're effectively paralyzed for a period of time. Obviously requires a huge amount of trust with whomever you're doing it with, and a safe environment, which we had set up, and I felt really comfortable. I'd also been doing a lot of yoga at the time and felt very centered to like let go and step into that experience. I didn't fight it going into it. I felt like I was able to like and step into it mentally, and I felt my own soul as like this sphere moving through this huge kind of like fabric string, like web pattern of space. And I realized that I exist without my body, that my consciousness is alive and well and will kind of continue on, and that for me is what feels like the soul is the part of myself that is not connected to my physical body. So that would be sort of the second experience. So from there, I think it's developed in a way that while I still like, I think everyone fears death to a certain extent, and I worry about the death of my family members, or my mother and father passing whenever it's their time. But I feel like, in a way, I know that they're still going to be there, and I know that I'm still going to be able to connect with them later. So while, oh my God, I'm like getting emotional. But while, when that time comes for them to pass, of course I'm gonna be like, that was, right. And I know it'll be a very difficult thing for me because I love them so much, but it's not the end.
Yeah.
So sort of like living this life with that understanding that things will go on, I guess, has been sort of an evolution in that way. I don't know if that answers the question or not.
That absolutely did. That was a beautiful response. Like, truly. Yeah. For me, it kind of also just takes the pressure off of this human experience in a way, and that understanding that like we are more than this. And while yes, there is the heartbreak that goes with death, or potential trauma for some experiences or whatever, it's that the soul lives on, and like we live on, and how just like empowering in a way. And that physically, of course, it doesn't take away, obviously we want people physically here with us. However, understanding that they can still be with us in different capacities, and just the evolution of it. So
yeah, totally. It's just a ride.
Exactly.
Do you listen to Bill Hicks at all?
What was that?
Bill Hicks?
No.
Oh, you should check him out.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
sometimes I forget names and get confused, so I might be lying, but I don't think so.
I'll send you a link to one of his stand-ups. He's passed now, but an artist friend of mine did this like incredible like sort of psychedelic portrait of him, and he kind of talks about it's just a ride. Life's just a journey. Like, have fun with it. don't worry about it so much. Don't be so wrapped up in like the minutia of it. Like you're gonna get off, at some point. Like this is gonna wrap up and sort of end, whatever, transform into whatever comes next.
Yes.
So,
Please send that to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally will.
It's love
short.
it.
It's just a couple minutes long. So.
Cool. Yeah. Love it. Well, Francess, thank you so much again, just for holding such a genuine and authentic space today. I so appreciate you, as I always have, but this was definitely a special conversation. So thank you.
For sure. Yeah, no, this has been wonderful. This has been amazing and so nice to catch up with you and just get to see you and chat. And thank you for allowing me to have some time to talk about my art and creative process. So, I feel like sometimes it can be hard to explain in the moment. So hopefully I was able to give some clarity to how these things kind of, influence me.
100%. All right. Oh, is Francess not totally great? I just love her so much. I'm so grateful for our connection and continued friendship. And again, if you haven't yet, definitely be sure to go check her out on Instagram at Mad Fizzy Media so that you can really just get a taste for what she's been creating recently. It's truly unreal. And hopefully you also enjoyed our conversation and learned something new today. And last but not least, before I let you go, if you do feel inspired and enjoyed today's conversation, I would be honored to have you rate and review the show. Your ratings and reviews mean so much to me and our wonderful guests. And in return, they just help me to grow the show and continue bringing on more incredible guests. So also be sure to drop in on Instagram and let me know what you're enjoying about the show, any guest or topic recommendations, or even just to say hi. You can find me at the Britt Olson, as I so love connecting with all of you. So please drop in. We have such a special community, and I would also love to invite you to join our private Modern Wellness Community Facebook group as well. So many fun conversations happening in there, and thank you again for tuning in and being a part of this community. Thank you, Francess, for holding space with us, and I look forward to continuing the journey with you again soon.